when people are looking at multi-cloud, it's not simply a question of understanding what AWS does versus GCP versus Azure. You still need very important tools like data encryption to make sure, especially as you've got all this data in motion, data at use, data in rest, you've got to make sure that's protected. And that's where Boxcryptor plays. All yours, Elizabeth.
Exactly, especially when it comes to dealing with sensitive data, and also the fact that we are relying a lot to the collaboration in the cloud, and there are many organizations who are working on an international level. So there is definitely a lot of importance on data encryption in the cloud. So what I would do at the moment is I will just stop my webcam during the presentation so that we can focus on the content. There we go. Okay, so I would like to say hello to everyone who is attending this nice event today, and greetings from Germany. As you have already heard, my name is Elizabeth, and I am a technical account manager at Secomba, which you might know a bit better from Boxcryptor, the encryption software for the protection of your sensitive data in the cloud. So, if you work as a CISO, enterprise architect, cloud security architect, DevOps, or you just have an interest in cloud security, this presentation will be worth the time for you. Today, we are going to cover some general information concerning the multi-cloud setup, why companies can't rely on a single cloud setup anymore, how does the implementation of a multi-cloud setup works, and what are its resulting risks, as well as a possible solution for the data protection in the name of Boxcryptor that you could consider, and several use cases which will cover the results of the implementation of Boxcryptor. So let's start with the basics. What is a multi-cloud setup? So if we take a look at the definition, a multi-cloud setup as such is basically the use of multiple cloud computing and storage services in a single network architecture, for example, a combination of several public cloud environments. In the multi-cloud setup, the services are connected to ensure a regular data flow between the different infrastructure and the various apps that are being used in between. While talking about the multi-cloud setup, it's not unusual to ask ourselves the following question: why is a single cloud setup not enough anymore? As we know, there are many companies who use several different cloud providers. With that said, a survey of the IDG, International Data Group, revealed that on average, businesses in EMEA, as an example, are deploying more than 5 different cloud environments. If we go into details, it turned out from the results from the survey that smaller companies with less than 5,000 employees use on average 3.2 cloud providers. Mid-sized organizations with up to 10,000 employees use on average 5 cloud providers, while at the same time, large organizations with more than 10,000 employees use on average 5.6 cloud providers. While we have all of these available results, it turns out that 9% of the companies that participated in the same survey stated that they use more than 10 separate cloud providers. So if we think about that and all of the data that is everywhere, we will also respectfully come to the topic of data protection later in the presentation. However, a recurring theme in the survey was that the more separate cloud providers an organization implements, the greater the benefits are that the same organization is experiencing. So what exactly are the benefits that an organization has as a result of multi-cloud setup? So first of all, there's the competitive pricing. Today, there are so many cloud providers which have created a competitive market that leads to an optimal pricing, as you, as the user, can select the best vendor based on its offerings. As we usually know from our own experience, no matter if we purchase a service personally or professionally as part of a company, the price of a service is more or less a crucial decision-making factor. So no wonder that the competitive pricing is among the top benefits. Agility is another point worth mentioning. With the right expertise at hand, organizations are able to achieve complete agility and workload mobility at the same time between different cloud platforms, storage providers, or hypervisors as well. A multi-cloud arrangement can also help protect a company's critical business applications and data by offering redundant backup and recovery capabilities that provide business continuity when an emergency strikes. For example, an emergency that might be caused by a failed disk, power outage, or natural disasters. So here comes the resilience into play. The multi-cloud setup is also not just a perfect solution for the storage, but for the scalability point, as it allows businesses to be flexible with the scaling of their storage up or down based on an ongoing demand, storage as well as other needed features. So let's say you and your team are having an idea that you would like to test. So you take as much storage as you need, and it turns out that you just don't want to continue with it after some time. So you can easily get rid of that storage, which is not quite the same, for example, if you had its physical equivalent. Then, by carefully evaluating the expectations and potential pitfalls and having a strong negotiation position, which makes it easy to switch from one cloud provider to another, companies can also harness the power of the cloud and get the most value out of their partnership with any cloud service provider. The question, what happens with my data in case your service is down or you go out of business, is one of the most frequently asked questions when it comes to evaluating various cloud providers. So this is something that I also hear on daily basis while working with different companies. With that said, the providers themselves, they have to make sure that they don't affect the business that purchases from them in any bad way. Therefore, the point about avoiding vendor lock-in here. And finally, the multi-cloud setup expands deployment capabilities by connecting applications and workflow processes to quickly deliver business services. We can look at it as an innovation booster, as companies can react fast to the ever-changing business and market conditions. If I go back to the example with the idea that you and your team were testing, but it turns out to be quite effective this time, you will be able to make it live, to deploy it into production in no time, literally, and make it available for your clients as well, thanks to the features that are in a close reach from the cloud services. But at the same time, the clear business benefits of the multi-cloud adoption must be hard won. So many CIOs and managers from the technology sector report significant obstacles that they had to overcome, which is quite useful information, for example, for any organization that is yet to go down that road. When asked about the top 3 challenges to implementing multi-cloud setup in their organization, respondents specified the integration of the different cloud services with their existing systems as the top challenge, which covers 50% of the respondents. So following close to that challenge came the question about the security, while using a multi-cloud setup, with 43% of the respondents mentioning it. The workloads migration, application performance, as well as cost management and issues concerning governance and compliance took the next few places. However, the results were not the same for everyone, as they showed remarkable differences between the different company sizes as well. For the market giants, cost management with 31% and security reaching 33% turned out to be the biggest challenges for the multi-cloud adoption. So at the same time, security and governance are considered to be a much more difficult task for smaller companies, around 55% compared with their large counterparts. However, all companies see the cloud as an opportunity to improve security and governance, and said it has helped them to achieve their goals so far. So this type of knowledge leads us to the next point on our agenda for today, which would be the implementation of the multi-cloud setup, especially where and how should a company implement general cloud computing. First of all, IT leaders must develop a decision framework so they could systematically examine different use case scenarios for adopting cloud computing within their companies. Such a framework forms the backbone of any successful cloud strategy. The decision framework starts with an understanding of several points, among which is the type of application and also its technical characteristics, the needs and the constraints of the associated data, and the integration of the application and data with other systems. In addition to this, a fact that is also considered a lot is whether we are talking about a brand new application or an existing one. So the next step would be to evaluate the benefits and the risks of cloud computing in general as it relates to each particular use case. So once the evaluation is done, if a company decides that the benefits of moving to the cloud are high and the resulting risks from the move are low, there shouldn't be practically any obstacle for the public cloud service to be adopted. However, if the evaluation results show that the benefits of moving to the cloud are low, and at the same time the risks are high, the same risk which could potentially result of the move, the cloud could be potentially avoided. Even those with the cloud-first strategy should consider moving lower benefit and high risk use cases to public cloud services as the secondary step. And there is also the third possibility, when the expected benefits are high as well as the risks. So in this case, a further analysis might be needed. Okay, so now if we focus only on the option about moving to a multi-cloud setup, we might as well consider some risks that are associated with it. With the increase of bought-in services, logically, the complexity of managing all those services increases as well. So depending on the type of service, it might be required that the end users will have to get some special training or gain a certain technical knowledge in order to work with these services on daily basis. So in addition to that, one extremely crucial point is the support that is being offered with every service. How responsive is the support team, and in which time zones do they operate? Especially important when it comes to working with international teams. Furthermore, the increase in the number of interfaces between different services resulting from the multitude of the bought-in services brings about an increased number of possible sources of error as well. One of the biggest issues of the multi-cloud model for most companies is most likely data protection, as there is always the shared responsibility model when it comes to security in public cloud services. That means that each provider has a certain set of security measures that need to be implemented, so they do not come always set as per default, which brings the user's responsibility to secure their data from their side as well, without having to always rely on 100% only on the cloud provider. Then internal and external compliance guidelines are also a risk worth mentioning. Especially outsourcing the storage of critical and sensitive data is oftentimes incompatible with the rules of law or compliance guidelines. Incompatibilities with internal compliance guidelines may be an issue, but the guidelines of external partners can also prohibit the use of certain services. So we will have to take this into consideration as well. Therefore, we come to the point of considering a solution to protect this sensitive data that we store in the cloud and that we use to collaborate between our teams. So let's talk about Boxcryptor. So first of all, storing your data with third-party services providers does not result in a problem if the data which is transmitted remains encrypted all of the time. With Boxcryptor, companies get a premium end-to-end encryption for their sensitive data. The tool itself is seamlessly integrated into your own existing IT infrastructure, which means that your end users, your team members, won't be needing any special technical knowledge for their daily work with Boxcryptor. The encryption of the data itself happens in the background without the user noticing it, so there are no distractions like loading bars or anything else. And more importantly, the data is encrypted before it is synchronized with the cloud. So the data is protected before it ever arrives in the cloud. Boxcryptor provides an additional security layer for more than 30 cloud storage providers like Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, including SharePoint and MS Teams, and other important providers on the market, and is furthermore capable of protecting the data on your privately owned NAS environment or file server as well. For this purpose, Boxcryptor uses a highly secure combination of AES and RSA encryption, which is based on the zero-knowledge principle. Following this principle, Boxcryptor doesn't know the password of your account, which is necessary to decrypt your own data. Hence, your own encrypted data remains accessible only for your own Boxcryptor account, and no one else is capable of decrypting it or using this data unless you share its access permissions with, for example, a team member or an external project collaborator, etc. So while saying that nobody else except for you will be able to access the encrypted data, that also involves the cloud storage provider. Why and how, you might ask yourself. So Boxcryptor encrypts the data locally on your own device with your own set of keys. Afterwards, the cloud storage provider syncs the data in the cloud, which means that the data travels and arrives in the cloud already protected. As it's already encrypted upon reaching the cloud servers, the cloud storage provider is not able to see what's the content behind your encrypted data. And at the same time, this is also valid for any, let's call them intruders, which might breach within your cloud storage account. So they will see that the encrypted data is there, but they won't be able to open it as they don't have your Boxcryptor username and password, which is something that only you know. So that it wouldn't be just a general overview, I can share two examples of how Boxcryptor is helping companies to protect their sensitive data. The first case covers a global news organization which has 250 locations worldwide and approximately 4,000 employees. A continuing use case our client had is how to best protect their journalists' privacy, including communication between sources and the content that they create. As their organization continues to adapt a cloud-first approach, there was a big concern about placing these really sensitive stories or unpublished research in the cloud, a lot of work in progress. Boxcryptor helps in this use case without affecting the user experience or the collaboration itself. So although the journalists live in different locations all over the world, they collaborate on sensitive stories using Boxcryptor's features without worrying about giving up on privacy. The second case that I would like to mention today is a university which has trusted Boxcryptor with a 45,000 user seats license. So in this case, Boxcryptor helps the university to secure their sensitive data. As part of their multi-cloud setup, the data itself is on various cloud storage providers, and the cloud storage services are mainly used for collaboration between researchers from different institutions, which means that by using Boxcryptor, they're actually not limiting their external collaboration as well. And in combination with Wisply, which is the second security product that we have developed, and it's also fully integrated within Boxcryptor as well, it is also possible to exchange data with external people who do not use Boxcryptor themselves. So you wouldn't add them as users under your own team plan, but you would still be able to securely share the encrypted files with them. In this case, all that the recipient would need is a browser with an internet connection. And it's really simple as that. So therefore, Boxcryptor is an important component for the secure collaboration across organizations. So this and many other case studies which explain how Boxcryptor protects the data in the multi-cloud setup can be found on our website directly at the customer stories section. So we have
Elizabeth,
reached at, yes.
This was great. This was great. I think it's very useful. I hear lots of questions on our side of the pond, so to speak, where people are very concerned about security, but they're also very concerned about performance, and the issues with encryption that people always worry about is encryption, de-encryption. So it's great to know that there's not any performance hit, and that should reassure everyone.
Absolutely, absolutely. Both operations are happening on the fly, as I mentioned, without the users noticing anything. So everybody is able to work with the data immediately without having to wait.
That was great. Thank you so much. We're so glad to have Boxcryptor now involved in Angelbeat. As many of you are aware, probably in Europe, especially in the EU, they're even more focused on data protection. Obviously, those rules, the GDPR, is coming over to the States and literally around the globe. But I
That's
think
right.
so their presence in Europe gives them great insights to help deal with a range of issues. So we're going to keep things moving along. We'll have all of this content available for downloading and encourage, hopefully we can get Boxcryptor speaking in the future.